Teaching experiment recording take number 482. I'm going to be talking today about whether or not providing exam essay questions before the exam is helpful or hurtful to student exam performance. So what motivated this study? E.M. Forster, an English novelist, once said, "How do I know what I think until I see what I say?" Now, that may very well apply to students, but it's even more important when it comes to being an instructor, when you need to evaluate how much a student knows about something. So, what would be the best way to do that? Well, the answer is essay exams. Why is there a picture of a Smurf here? That's an excellent question. When I did a search for images related to essay, this is what came up. I have no idea why. Alright, well, why essay exams? Research has pointed to the fact that they tap higher order learning goals, such as synthesizing, analyzing, and evaluating material. Additionally, some researchers believe it encourages critical thinking. Finally, it also intends to engage students in deep processing versus shallow processing, though this finding is contentious. But what do students think of essay exams? Well, without much thought, you can probably answer that they hate them with a passion. It requires longer studying, more effort. This is, of course, relative to test formats like multiple choice or short answer. But students do admit that they are a better test of knowledge. The takeaway is that despite student protests, essay exams do seem to be a pretty good way of measuring student knowledge. However, not all essay exams are created equal. Educators have a choice, for example, in the type of delivery method they use to administer an essay exam. Most of you at OU are probably familiar with the essay question seen in advance of exam. This is the technique whereby an instructor gives you a list of 10 essay questions that may appear on the exam a couple weeks in advance, and then you randomly get assigned 4 of those or so when the exam comes. This is versus the traditional unseen essay exam that most people dread and requires you to just study blindly. So, which of these test methods would you prefer? Well, you're probably thinking the seen test because there's less uncertainty. You probably have a little more time to prepare, perhaps. Well, but we know students don't always choose the optimal method from a learning standpoint, so maybe we should test to see which is better. Enter the current research proposal. Do different formats create different outcomes? We can talk about this in terms of things like test performance, where there's opposing theories. One theory is that providing items ahead of time gives students a chance to review important information, to focus, to organize their thoughts on the topic at hand, and to delve deeply into more specific areas. However, test items in advance may cause students to abandon breadth of knowledge in favor of depth and focus too narrowly on the tested information, and thus neglect to realize the importance of or remember information that is less explicitly tied to the pre-provided test questions. In this case, the unseen exam may prove to be the more advantageous because it requires students to devote more time and effort to studying all aspects of the course material and thereby gaining a more robust representation of the information. But test performance isn't the only thing we can consider. For instance, test anxiety. Of course, we can expect differences in anxiety between these two methods, and this should be considered for reasons other than just your teaching evaluations. We know that test anxiety can contribute to things like performance decrement, as well as other negative effects such as ineffective studying, low perceptions of health, and it's comorbid with a number of other anxiety disorders. And in order to answer these research questions, I propose the following experimental setup. First, we're going to have 2 groups. One group will be the seen group, which will be the group who received the essay exam questions a few weeks before the exam itself takes place, and the other is the classic testing method, the unseen essay exam. The participants will be part of standard college courses that have a final exam component, and it will be taught by the same professor over the same course content and of classes of relatively equal size in order to try to control to the greatest extent possible any differences or teaching effects. Our variables will be test performance as measured by grade on that exam. This scoring will be done by 2 human beings that have an intra-class correlation coefficient of 0.85 or greater, that is inter-rater reliability is very good, as well as a commercially available computer program, which is an essay evaluation system used by ETS. And this combines syntactic variety and discourse analysis, so an analysis of breadth, and it combines that with semantic analysis as an analysis of depth. Finally, to measure anxiety, we will administer the test anxiety inventory. This modified version features questions that are aimed to ask about this specific exam rather than about students' anxiety toward exams in general. Now that we've discussed the experiment setup, let's discuss the procedure. The test will be administered 1 week before finals week, and this becomes important in a little bit. Both groups are going to receive the same 4 essay questions, whether they were in the seen in advance group or the unseen group. And the anxiety scale is going to be taken immediately before test. Participants are going to be told they must return the week after finals in the final week in order to receive credit for their exam. And the reason for this is because of probably students' favorite all-time manipulation. They're going to be given a second surprise essay exam. By waiting a week and administering a second exam, we get a better sense of how much students actually learned from the course and whether or not the results on the first exam were part of a temporary understanding based on cramming or some other kind of study effect. In terms of analysis, we're going to analyze results from both exams. We're going to use an ANCOVA for anxiety, and we're going to covary anxiety out of the performance measures if it turns out to be significant. And we're finally going to basically look for differences in the test conditions between the groups on their performance and anxiety. Alright, let's look at some potential results. So first of all, there could be no differences between conditions at all. This is not depicted. What we do see here is that we have condition 1 and 2, which could be either the seen or unseen conditions. I'm not making any predictions as to the direction of these findings. I'm just going to display some potential patterns. And along the bottom there, exam 1 and 2 refer to the first exams and the second exams respectively. I expect that the patterns I'm going to show you are going to hold whether anxiety ends up being a significant covariate or not. I don't expect the patterns of findings to change, so these apply in both situations. And the general rule for each of these potential results I'm going to be showing is to pick the method that results in the higher scores. And if you can see space in between the two measures, for instance here, that means that there is a significant difference between those two scores. So in this particular condition, you can see that performance in one condition could be better across both tests, in which case we'd want to choose condition 1, this top line here. Alright, and here we have the second set of possible results, and we can see that in the first exam here, it appears that there's an advantage for whichever test condition this might have been, but by the second exam, results have pretty much evened out. So this temporary performance advantage might be due to something like a match between expectations and format, but there's no benefit to learning overall. But just in case, you'll probably want to choose condition 1, if nothing else, but for your evaluation's sake. Here in condition C, we see that there are immediate benefits to exam performance for condition 2, but upon the retest exam we can see there's actually long-term deficit to learning. So in this case you'd actually want to choose condition 1 again, because that demonstrates the most consistent learning and the best learning overall. Finally, in the fourth predicted potential result, we can see that there's no immediate difference to either test method, but over the long term there's a deficit to learning for condition 1 here. So in this case we definitely would want to choose whichever test method resulted in this pattern. Alright, and so we're also interested in looking at anxiety, and on a 5-point Likert scale, which the test anxiety inventory uses as a measure, we can see that students under test condition 1 found the test much more anxiety-inducing than did condition 2. So we'd again want to choose condition 2 for the sake of our evaluations. The sake of the students. Also, it's important to keep in mind that anxiety could have an interactive effect on test performance, in which case the teacher should carefully consider test delivery method and anxiety together in order to pick the one that does the best job of increasing learning without costing students too much in terms of anxiety. Alright, I know you're probably thinking, wow, what a flawless design, but there are a few limitations I still need to go over with you. For instance, that there could be other interactions that exist that were not explained by the potential findings that I listed there. However, I didn't show those for the sake of brevity and because for the intentions of this paper, those potential outcomes aren't theoretically meaningful. Additionally, you might be thinking, well, after delay, maybe part of the decline in performance is due to retention issues. Well, yes, that might be the case, but this is really an issue if you consider from the standpoint of learning, because would we say that somebody really learned anything if they don't remember it a week later? So, in conclusion, we've shown that essays should be used for exams as opposed to multiple choice or short answer. Of course, there are situations where those tests might be more desirable, but in general, essays provide the best measure of what students actually know or don't. We know that different delivery methods could potentially lead to different learning outcomes, and also that they involve different studying styles. So an educator must be careful to choose the method that's most compatible with their goals for the course. Test anxiety can play a significant role in performance and has health implications, and therefore the educator should choose the method that causes less anxiety. And learning and anxiety may have a trade-off or an interactive effect, in which case educators must choose their personal preference based on priority. In other words, are they trying to maximize learning, or are they trying to minimize anxiety, as these two conditions are often at odds with each other. Alright, that concludes my presentation. Did you have any questions or comments? Well, unfortunately, this is a video, so you'll have to send them in or something. Thanks for watching. Oh, and here are some references.